I still remember the day I found out my future had been stolen, not by a stranger, not by some scam, but by the two people who were supposed to protect me the most, my parents. The acceptance letter sat on my desk, glowing under the afternoon sunlight coming through my bedroom window. I must have read it 20 times already. I had done it. After years of studying late at night, after sacrificing weekends, after working every summer while my friends enjoyed vacations, I had finally been accepted into the university of my dreams. The same university I had been planning for since I was 14. The same university everyone knew I wanted to attend. And most importantly, the same university my parents had promised they were saving money for. A college fund. My college fund. A fund that had supposedly been growing for nearly 18 years. At least that's what I believed. That evening, I walked downstairs holding the acceptance letter. My mother was cooking dinner. My father was reading the newspaper. My younger brother, Tyler, was lying on the couch scrolling through his phone. I couldn't stop smiling. "Mom? Dad?" I said excitedly. "I got in." My mother looked up and smiled. "Oh, that's wonderful." My father nodded. "Congratulations." Something about their reaction felt strange, cold, almost distracted. I ignored the feeling. "I'll need to confirm enrollment soon," I said. "We should probably talk about tuition and the college fund." The room went silent. A silence so sudden it felt like someone had turned off all the sound in the house. My mother slowly put down the spoon she was holding. My father folded his newspaper. Neither of them looked at me. Instead, they looked at each other. My stomach tightened. "What?" I asked. No answer. "Mom?" She swallowed hard. "Sweetheart." That single word made my heart sink, because every bad conversation in my life had started exactly the same way. "Sweetheart." My father cleared his throat. "We need to talk." I sat down. The acceptance letter suddenly felt heavy in my hands. What happened? Another silence. Then my mother finally spoke. "The college fund isn't there anymore." For a second, I thought I had heard her wrong. "What do you mean?" "It was used." "Used? Used for what?" "The fund had one purpose. College. My college." I laughed nervously. "Okay, used for what? A temporary loan or something?" Neither parent answered. Then Tyler sat up on the couch and smirked. That was the moment I knew. My chest went cold. "No." Nobody spoke. "No." My voice was louder now. "Tell me you didn't." My father looked away. My mother started crying, and Tyler smiled. A smile I will never forget. The answer was written all over their faces. They had done it. They had taken every dollar meant for my education and given it to him, my brother, the same brother who had failed classes, the same brother who quit every job after 2 weeks, the same brother who somehow always became the center of every family crisis. I stared at them, unable to process what I was hearing. "How much?" I asked quietly. My father looked embarrassed. "All of it." The room started spinning. "All of it?" My mother nodded. I couldn't breathe. 18 years. Gone. Every birthday contribution from grandparents, every holiday check, every savings deposit, every promise. Gone. "What did you spend it on?" Nobody answered immediately. Then Tyler spoke. "A business opportunity." I looked at him. "A what?" He leaned back comfortably. "A business." I couldn't believe it. Tyler had never successfully managed anything in his entire life. "What business?" He shrugged. "Crypto." I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. You gave my college fund to Tyler so he could gamble on crypto? It's not gambling, Tyler snapped. My father quickly stepped in. He convinced us it was an investment. I stared at him. And where is this investment now? Nobody spoke. I already knew the answer. It was gone. Every penny. Tyler looked away. My mother began crying harder. My father rubbed his forehead. The silence confirmed everything. The money had disappeared, destroyed. Years of sacrifice erased by one terrible decision, and somehow they expected me to accept it. I stood up, slowly, carefully, because I felt like screaming. What happens now? I asked. My mother looked up. We can figure something out. I laughed, a bitter laugh. No, we can't. My father frowned. Don't talk like that. Talk like what? Like we're your enemies. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My enemies? I pointed toward Tyler. You gave him my future. It wasn't like that. Then explain it. Nobody could. Because there was no explanation. Only excuses. And excuses don't pay tuition. That night I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling for hours. Every memory replayed in my head. Every promise. Every conversation. Every time my parents told me not to worry because they were preparing for my future. Had they been lying the entire time? Or had they simply decided that Tyler mattered more? The next morning I received another shock. Grandpa called. My grandfather and I had always been close, closer than anyone else in the family. He believed in hard work, responsibility, keeping promises, everything Tyler hated. Congratulations on getting accepted, Grandpa said. Thanks. He immediately noticed something was wrong. What happened? I hesitated. Then I told him everything. Every detail. The missing fund, the crypto investment, the excuses. The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. Then Grandpa spoke. His voice was calm. Too calm. Your parents did what? I repeated it. Another long silence. Then he said something strange. Come see me. Today? Today. Why? Just come. I arrived at Grandpa's house that afternoon. He lived alone in a large old home filled with memories. Family photos covered every wall. Most included smiling versions of people who no longer seemed familiar. Grandpa opened the door before I even knocked. He looked angry, not disappointed. Angry. I had rarely seen him like that. He led me inside. We sat in the living room. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then he asked one question. Did they tell you everything? I frowned. What do you mean? His expression darkened. Exactly what I mean. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. What aren't they telling me? Grandpa stared out the window, as if debating whether to reveal something. Finally, he sighed. There's something your parents don't know. I leaned forward. What? He stood up, slowly walked across the room, and pointed toward a large painting hanging above the fireplace. I had seen it my entire life. An old landscape painting. Nothing special. At least that's what I thought. Grandpa grabbed the frame, pulled it aside, and revealed a steel door hidden inside the wall. A safe. My eyes widened. What is that? Grandpa looked directly at me, his voice calm, steady, powerful. A promise. I stared at the safe, completely confused. What promise? Grandpa smiled slightly, the kind of smile that appears right before someone changes everything. The promise I made 18 years ago. My heartbeat accelerated. What are you talking about? He reached into his pocket, pulled out a key, and slowly inserted it into the lock. The safe clicked. The heavy door began opening, and inside was something that would completely change my life. Something my parents had never told me. something Tyler could never touch, something hidden for nearly 2 decades. Grandpa looked at me, then at the contents of the safe, and said quietly, "Your real college fund." The moment Grandpa said those 3 words, "your real college fund," my entire world seemed to stop. I stood frozen in the middle of his living room, staring at the open safe hidden behind the painting. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. For a second, I thought maybe this was some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe there were a few savings bonds inside. Maybe a few $1,000s. Maybe Grandpa was simply trying to make me feel better after what my parents had done. But the look on his face told me this was something much bigger. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't joking. He was completely serious. Slowly, he reached inside the safe and pulled out a thick folder. Then another. Then a small metal box. Every item looked organized and carefully protected, as if he had been waiting years for this exact moment. He carried everything to the dining table and motioned for me to sit down. My hands felt numb as I lowered myself into the chair. Grandpa sat across from me and placed the folder in front of me. "Open it," he said quietly. I did. The first page nearly made me stop breathing. It wasn't a college savings account. It wasn't even close. It was an investment portfolio statement. I blinked several times, thinking I must be reading it wrong. Then I looked again. The balance contained more money than I had ever seen in my life. My eyes widened. "Grandpa?" I whispered. "What is this?" He folded his hands together and leaned back. "That," he said calmly, "is what happens when someone keeps their promises." My mind struggled to process the number. For years I had believed my future depended entirely on the fund my parents controlled. The fund they had given to Tyler. The fund they had destroyed. Yet sitting in front of me was something far larger. Something that had been growing quietly in secret for nearly 2 decades. "I don't understand," I said. Grandpa nodded slowly. "I know you don't. That's because your parents only know half the story." He took a deep breath before continuing. "When you were born, I made a decision. I watched your parents spend money carelessly. I watched them rescue Tyler every time he created a problem. Even as a little boy, he never learned responsibility because nobody forced him to." Grandpa's voice remained calm, but I could hear disappointment underneath every word. "So I decided I would create a separate account, one that nobody could touch. Not your parents, not Tyler, nobody." I stared at him. "You saved all this?" He nodded. "Every birthday, every Christmas, every major investment gain, every bonus, every contribution I wanted to make for your future went into this account." I couldn't believe it. "Why didn't you tell me?" Grandpa smiled sadly. "Because if people know money exists, they start planning ways to spend it." The truth of that statement hit me instantly. If my parents had known about this account, Tyler probably would have found a way to drain it too. Suddenly, everything made sense. Grandpa wasn't protecting money. He was protecting my future. For the first time since discovering my college fund had vanished, I felt something other than anger. Relief, hope, gratitude. But then another question entered my mind. Do Mom and Dad know? Grandpa's expression hardened. No. Why not? Because they already had a responsibility. His eyes narrowed slightly. Their responsibility was protecting the fund they promised you. The room fell silent. I looked back at the documents. The numbers were real. Every page confirmed it. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't wishful thinking. My future wasn't gone. But that didn't erase what my parents had done. Grandpa seemed to sense exactly what I was thinking. Money isn't the biggest issue here, he said. Trust is. Those words hit harder than anything else. Because he was right. The missing college fund wasn't just about tuition. It was about betrayal. The people I trusted most had chosen someone else over me. They had sacrificed my future to save Tyler from the consequences of his own choices. No amount of money could erase that feeling. Grandpa reached for another folder. "There's something else you need to see." He opened it and slid several papers across the table. I examined them carefully. My stomach dropped. These were records showing conversations between Grandpa and my parents over the years. Letters, emails, notes, repeated warnings, repeated advice, repeated requests for them to stop enabling Tyler. My hands tightened around the pages. Grandpa hadn't been silent. He had tried to stop this for years. One letter stood out more than the others. It was dated 3 years earlier. In it, Grandpa warned my parents directly that continuing to rescue Tyler financially would eventually harm the entire family. The response from my father was attached underneath. Reading it made my jaw clench. "Tyler just needs one more opportunity." One more opportunity. Apparently that sentence had cost me my college fund. Grandpa shook his head. "Your parents convinced themselves they were helping him." "Were they?" I asked. "No," Grandpa replied immediately. "Helping someone means teaching responsibility. Protecting someone from consequences is not help. It's damage." I sat quietly as his words sank in. Suddenly, years of family history looked completely different. Tyler had never faced consequences. Every mistake had been cleaned up. Every debt had been paid. Every failure had been blamed on someone else. And now he had reached the point where he believed he deserved everything, including money that wasn't his. Grandpa stood and walked toward the window. "You know what the saddest part is?" he asked. I shook my head. "Your parents think they sacrificed your future to save Tyler." He turned toward me. "But they didn't save him." The truth in those words was impossible to ignore. Tyler wasn't stronger. He wasn't more responsible. He wasn't better prepared for life. He was worse. Every rescue had made him weaker. Suddenly, Grandpa's phone rang. He looked at the screen. His expression changed instantly. "Speak of the devil," he muttered. "Who is it?" I asked. He showed me the screen. "Mom," he answered. The moment he placed the phone on speaker, my mother's anxious voice filled the room. "Dad, is she there?" Grandpa glanced at me. "Yes." "Can you put her on?" "No." Silence. Then Mom spoke again. "Please." Grandpa's voice became cold. "Did you tell her?" My mother hesitated. "We explained everything." "Everything?" Grandpa asked. "Yes." "Interesting," Grandpa replied. "Because she just learned several things from me that you conveniently forgot to mention." Another silence followed. Even through the phone, I could feel her panic. "Dad," she whispered. Grandpa didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You stole her future." "We didn't steal it." "Then what would you call it?" My mother started crying. Grandpa remained silent. Finally, she whispered, "We were trying to help Tyler." Grandpa's response was immediate. "No, you were choosing Tyler." The line went quiet. No excuses, no arguments, nothing. Because for once, there was no defense available. Deep down, everyone knew it was true. After the call ended, Grandpa looked at me and sighed. "This isn't over." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He sat back down slowly. "Because Tyler doesn't know about the safe yet." A chill ran through my body. "And when he finds out?" Grandpa's eyes locked onto mine. "He's going to want what's inside." The room suddenly felt colder. Because we both knew Tyler. We both knew how he reacted when someone else had something he wanted. And for the first time, I realized the real battle hadn't even started yet. For the next few days, I tried to focus on the good news. Grandpa's secret fund meant my education was safe. The nightmare my parents had created no longer controlled my future. On paper, everything should have felt better. But emotionally, nothing felt normal. Every time my phone buzzed with a message from Mom, I ignored it. Every missed call from Dad sat unanswered. I wasn't ready to hear excuses anymore. For 18 years, they had promised to protect my future. Then in a single decision, they had handed it to Tyler. The money was one thing. The betrayal was something else entirely. Meanwhile, Grandpa remained unusually quiet. He seemed to be expecting something. Every time I visited, I noticed him checking his phone or looking out the front window. Finally, 3 days later, I learned why. Tyler found out about the safe. It happened because my mother couldn't keep a secret. According to Grandpa, she called him repeatedly, begging him to help repair the family. During one of those conversations, she accidentally mentioned that I would still be able to attend college because of another account. That single sentence was enough. Tyler overheard it. And once Tyler heard there was money involved, he became obsessed. He demanded answers. He pressured Mom. He pressured Dad. Eventually, they revealed enough information for him to figure out the truth. Grandpa had a separate fund, a fund that had never been touched, a fund that belonged to me. The moment Tyler learned that, he stopped feeling guilty about destroying my college fund. Instead, he became angry that he couldn't access Grandpa's money too. The first sign of trouble came on a Saturday afternoon. I was helping Grandpa organize some documents when a car suddenly pulled into the driveway. Grandpa glanced through the window and sighed heavily. "Right on schedule," he muttered. A few seconds later, the front door opened without knocking. Tyler walked inside, followed closely by Mom and Dad. The look on Tyler's face immediately told me this wasn't a family visit. He wasn't here to apologize. He wasn't here to make peace. He was here because he wanted something, as usual. Grandpa remained seated. "What do you want?" he asked calmly. Tyler crossed his arms. "We need to talk about the fund." Grandpa didn't even blink. "No, we don't." Tyler's jaw tightened. "That's family money." Grandpa laughed. Actually laughed. It was the first time I'd seen him laugh since this whole nightmare began. "Family money?" he repeated. "Interesting choice of words." Tyler pointed toward me. "She already has enough. Why does she get everything?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He had destroyed my original college fund and somehow still viewed himself as the victim. Grandpa slowly stood. Despite his age, he somehow seemed taller than everyone else in the room. "Let's get something straight," he said. "That money was never yours." Tyler immediately fired back. "I'm family too. Being family doesn't make you entitled." Grandpa's words hit like a hammer. Tyler looked toward Mom and Dad for support. Unsurprisingly, they stepped in. My father cleared his throat. "Maybe there's a compromise." Grandpa's expression darkened instantly. "A compromise?" Dad nodded. "Maybe some portion could help Tyler get back on his feet." I stared at him in disbelief. Even after everything, they were still doing it. Still protecting him. Still rescuing him. Still sacrificing everyone else for his benefit. Grandpa looked equally stunned. "You lost one college fund trying to save him," Grandpa said. "Now you're trying to lose another?" Nobody answered. Because there was no answer. Tyler's frustration grew. "Why does everyone act like I'm some criminal?" he snapped. "I made one mistake." I nearly laughed. One mistake? The destroyed fund wasn't one mistake. It was simply the latest disaster in a lifetime of disasters. Failed businesses, unpaid debts, broken promises. Every time something collapsed, someone else paid the price. Usually Mom and Dad. This time, it had been me. Grandpa slowly walked toward a cabinet and pulled out an old photo album. At first, nobody understood why. Then he opened it. Inside were photographs stretching back decades. Family vacations, birthdays, holidays. Grandpa flipped through page after page until he stopped at one particular photograph. He placed it on the table. Do you remember this? He asked my parents. Their faces immediately changed. Tyler frowned. What is it? Nobody answered. I leaned forward and examined the picture. It showed my father standing beside a much younger grandpa. Between them sat a small pickup truck. The photo looked at least 30 years old. Grandpa tapped the image. Tell them. Dad looked away. Dad. Tell them, Grandpa repeated. The room became painfully silent. Finally, Grandpa looked at me. Your father wasn't always like this. I frowned. What do you mean? Grandpa sighed. When he was Tyler's age, he made a terrible decision. Everyone froze. Dad looked uncomfortable. Mom looked nervous. Tyler looked confused. Grandpa continued. I spent 10 years building a small business. 10 years. Then one day, your father borrowed money from the company without permission. My eyes widened. Dad had never mentioned this. Ever. Grandpa continued speaking. He believed he could double the money through a risky investment. My stomach sank. The similarity was impossible to miss. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Grandpa pointed toward Dad. The investment failed. Nobody spoke. The company nearly collapsed. The room remained silent. And I almost lost everything. I looked at my father. He couldn't meet my eyes. Suddenly I understood. This wasn't just about Tyler. This pattern existed long before Tyler was born. Grandpa sat down again. Do you know what happened next? He asked quietly. Nobody answered. Your father spent years paying it back. Dad nodded slowly. Every dollar. Grandpa nodded back. Every dollar. Then he looked toward Mom and Dad. I didn't rescue him. The room felt frozen. I didn't protect him from consequences. Grandpa's voice remained steady. I forced him to fix what he broke. My father finally spoke. And it changed me. Grandpa nodded. Exactly. Then he pointed directly at Tyler. That's the lesson you never learned. Tyler immediately became defensive. This isn't about me. Grandpa's eyes narrowed. It's entirely about you. The confrontation exploded from there. Tyler accused everyone of attacking him. Mom defended him. Dad tried to calm things down. But the truth had already entered the room, and once truth arrives, it's difficult to push it back out. For years, my parents had convinced themselves they were helping Tyler. Now they were being forced to face reality. Every rescue had made him more dependent. Every excuse had made him less accountable. Every bailout had convinced him the rules didn't apply to him. Tyler suddenly pointed at me. She's always been the favorite. The accusation stunned everyone. Grandpa laughed again. Favorite? Tyler nodded aggressively. You always cared more about her. Grandpa stared at him for several seconds. Then he said something none of us expected. No. Tyler looked confused. Grandpa's expression softened slightly. I simply expected more from her because she earned it. The words landed heavily. Tyler had no response. Then Grandpa revealed the darkest truth of all. Years earlier, before I was even born, Tyler had inherited a small trust from another relative. A modest amount. Enough to help him start adulthood responsibly. The money had disappeared by the time he turned 21. Everyone assumed poor spending habits were responsible. But that wasn't the truth. Grandpa looked directly at my parents. Tell him. Mom's face turned pale. Dad closed his eyes. My stomach tightened. Tell him, Grandpa repeated. Finally, Dad whispered the words. We spent it. Tyler froze. What? Mom began crying. We were in financial trouble. Tyler looked completely stunned. You spent my trust fund? Nobody answered. Because they had. Suddenly everything changed. Tyler wasn't the only person who had taken money that didn't belong to him. Years ago, my parents had done something remarkably similar. The room fell silent as everyone processed the revelation. Tyler looked betrayed. Mom looked ashamed. Dad looked defeated. And for the first time in my life, I saw something unexpected in Tyler's eyes. Understanding. Because now he knew exactly how betrayal felt. Grandpa slowly stood and walked toward the door. "This family has spent decades repeating the same mistakes," he said quietly. "Taking what belongs to others, excusing bad decisions, avoiding responsibility." He looked around the room. "That ends now." Nobody argued. Nobody could. Because for the first time, every secret was finally sitting in the open. Every lie, every betrayal, every mistake, exposed. But as everyone sat there in shocked silence, I had a feeling the story wasn't over yet. Because Tyler wasn't the kind of person who accepted defeat easily. And the look on his face as he stared toward Grandpa's safe told me one thing. He still hadn't given up. Not even close. The confrontation at Grandpa's house should have been the end of the story. Every secret had been exposed. Every lie had been dragged into the light. My parents had finally been forced to face the damage they had caused, and Tyler had learned that betrayal felt very different when he was the one experiencing it. For the first time in years, nobody could hide behind excuses. Nobody could pretend the problems were someone else's fault. Yet as I drove home that night, I couldn't shake a strange feeling. Something wasn't finished. Tyler had remained unusually quiet during the final moments of the argument. He hadn't apologized. He hadn't accepted responsibility. He hadn't admitted he was wrong. Instead, he had simply sat there staring at Grandpa's safe with an expression I knew all too well. It was the same look he always had whenever he convinced himself he deserved something that belonged to someone else. And that feeling turned out to be right. 3 days later, my phone rang just after midnight. I was asleep when the call came through. Groggy and confused, I grabbed the phone and immediately saw Grandpa's name on the screen. My heart jumped. Grandpa never called that late. The moment I answered, I heard his calm voice, surprisingly calm. "I'm okay," he said before I could speak. "But you should come over." Within 20 minutes, I was driving through empty streets toward his house. Questions raced through my mind the entire way. Had something happened? Was Grandpa sick? Had there been another family argument? When I arrived, I immediately noticed 2 police vehicles parked outside. My stomach dropped. Several officers stood near the front porch talking quietly. Grandpa was sitting calmly in a chair near the doorway, looking more annoyed than frightened. The moment he saw me, he motioned me over. "What happened?" I asked. Grandpa shook his head slowly. "Tyler happened." The story unfolded quickly. Earlier that evening, Tyler had shown up at Grandpa's house while believing nobody was home. He had apparently convinced himself that if he could access the safe, he could somehow claim part of the money. Maybe he believed he deserved it. Maybe desperation had clouded his judgment. Maybe years of being rescued from consequences had convinced him that the rules simply didn't apply to him. Whatever the reason, he had attempted something unbelievably foolish. He tried to enter the house and reach the safe himself. Unfortunately for him, Grandpa had recently installed security cameras. The police had been contacted almost immediately. I closed my eyes and sighed. Even after everything, Tyler still hadn't learned. Grandpa looked disappointed more than angry. "This wasn't about money anymore," he said quietly. "This was about entitlement." I couldn't disagree. By morning, the entire family knew what had happened. Mom arrived first, crying harder than I had ever seen. Dad looked exhausted, as if years had suddenly been added to his face overnight. Tyler arrived later. His confidence was gone. The arrogance that had followed him throughout the entire situation had finally disappeared. He looked defeated. For several minutes, nobody spoke. The silence felt heavier than any argument. Eventually, Grandpa stood and walked toward the center of the room. Despite everything, his voice remained calm. "I've spent years watching this family repeat the same mistakes," he said. Everyone listened. Every time someone made a bad decision, someone else rushed in to erase the consequences. Mom lowered her head. Dad stared at the floor. Tyler looked away. Grandpa continued. You told yourselves it was love. His eyes settled on my parents. But love without accountability becomes weakness. Nobody argued. Nobody could. Because deep down, they all knew he was right. Then Grandpa did something none of us expected. He walked to the safe hidden behind the painting and opened it one final time. The familiar click echoed through the room. Everyone watched silently. Slowly, he removed several folders and placed them on the table. Then he looked directly at me. Your education fund remains exactly where it belongs. Relief washed through me. But Grandpa wasn't finished. He turned toward my parents. As for the rest of this family, today marks a new beginning. My father frowned slightly. What do you mean? Grandpa slid several documents across the table. They were financial records, payment agreements, debt summaries, plans, detailed plans. Grandpa had spent days preparing them. The money that was lost from the original college fund must be repaid. Mom's eyes widened. Dad looked shocked. Tyler stared silently. Grandpa nodded. Not because the money is needed. He glanced toward me. Her future is secure. Then his expression hardened. Because responsibility matters. For the first time, Tyler spoke quietly instead of defensively. You want me to pay it back? Grandpa nodded. Every dollar you can. Tyler swallowed hard. That could take years. Yes, Grandpa replied. It could. The room fell silent. Then Grandpa said something that changed everything. That's exactly the point. His words hung in the air. For once there would be no rescue, no bailout, no shortcut. No one would step in and erase the consequences. Tyler would have to face them himself, the same way Grandpa had once forced my father to face his mistakes decades earlier. I looked at Dad and noticed tears forming in his eyes. Maybe he finally understood. Maybe he recognized the lesson because he had lived it himself. Whatever the reason, he slowly nodded. He's right, Dad said quietly. Mom looked at him in surprise. Dad continued. We've been protecting Tyler from consequences his entire life. Tyler looked stunned. Dad turned toward him. And we hurt you by doing it. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The truth settled over the room like a weight that had finally been set down after years of being carried. Over the next few months, something remarkable happened. Not immediately, not magically. Change came slowly, painfully, but it came. Tyler found a steady job for the first time in years. He didn't love it. He complained often, yet he stayed. Every month, a portion of his paycheck went toward repaying what he had taken. It wasn't easy. Some months were difficult. Some months he wanted to quit. But for once, quitting wasn't an option. My parents changed too. The transformation wasn't perfect, but it was real. They stopped making excuses. They stopped solving every problem for Tyler. They stopped treating responsibility like punishment. For the first time, they began understanding the difference between helping someone and enabling them. And as for me, I finally enrolled at the university I had dreamed about for years. Walking across campus during my first semester felt surreal. Every building, every classroom, every opportunity represented something bigger than education. It represented freedom. It represented perseverance. It represented the fact that someone had believed in me enough to protect my future when others failed. Several years later, I graduated near the top of my class. Grandpa sat proudly in the front row during the ceremony. My parents were there too. So was Tyler. When my name was called, I looked toward them. For a brief moment, memories of everything that had happened flashed through my mind. The missing college fund, the betrayal, the arguments, the safe, the secrets, the long road that followed. Yet standing there, diploma in hand, I realized something important. Justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes justice looks like truth. Sometimes it looks like accountability. Sometimes it looks like finally becoming the person others tried to prevent you from becoming. After the ceremony, Grandpa handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. The paper was simple, the message was short, but I have kept it ever since. It read, "Money can build opportunities, but character builds a life. Never confuse the two." Those words became one of the most valuable gifts I have ever received. Because in the end, the story was never really about a college fund. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about the safe. It was about choices. Every person in our family faced a choice. Some chose shortcuts. Some chose excuses. Some chose responsibility. And eventually, every choice produced a consequence. Today, whenever people ask how I managed to overcome the betrayal, I tell them something simple. The people who took from me thought they were deciding my future. They thought one decision could define my life. They were wrong. Because your future is not determined by the people who betray you. It's determined by how you respond when betrayal arrives. And sometimes, when everything seems lost, the person who quietly believed in you all along is already holding the key to a door you never knew existed. Never sacrifice responsibility to protect someone from consequences. Real love doesn't remove accountability. It teaches it. And while money can be lost, trust can be broken, and opportunities can disappear, integrity remains the one investment that never loses its value.